Max, give me a second. I want you to explain to me why you think this is the best flavor ever.
You should have a bigger bottle than 30 mils of it. That's for sure.
I know, you told me that, but why?
Okay, so we've talked about the differences a lot in cookies and what they're all lacking, right?
Yeah.
Because they always feel like they got like a white sugar kind of a vibe to them. They're not ever dark enough because, you know, probably they think that they would come off like too dirty or something. That's like brown sugar in a bottle. I don't even know what. They kind of ruined it for themselves that they called it Flavorah caramel because it's literally just brown sugar. And it's the best brown sugar.
But we have used this flavor in cookies and I know it works. But I don't think it's just because of the brown sugar.
There's something that it does, though, to cookies. Not necessarily, I mean, yes, it has that brown sugar like cookies has, but it also has like a texture, doesn't it?
It's like wet. It's not wet like caramel. It's not syrupy, but it tastes like when brown sugar is kind of like breaking down, like melting or whatever.
It feels like a simple syrup, but made with brown sugar.
It creates separation in a weird way. It's literally nothing more than an additive. It's just like dark sweetener. You know, like how you have like Cap Super Sweet and you would use like that for like, you know, with like chocolate and stuff to make something seem more syrupy and stuff like that. It's like that in a bottle already. It is. It's kind of like your, you know, like a brown sugar simple syrup because it's literally intended as a sweetener. It makes things a little bit darker. If you want to darken up like an ice cream or you want to make something like a brown butter, you can literally use like 0.25% of Flavorah caramel and it's going to give it that just a little bit darker, but without anything else making it seem burnt.
Would you use it for anything else than a cookie if you want like to cook something?
Yeah, I mean, I would do it with baked pineapple from Wonder Flavors because it seems to me that it gives it more of that. It's not, it kind of tastes like it caramelizes things, but it doesn't taste like it's caramel. It doesn't taste like it's just brown sugar too. It seems like it has this little bit of a blending effect that it works really well with fruits and ice cream or, you know, whatever you want to put it with, but you have to use it as an additive. You're not going to make like a brown sugar ice cream and use it at like 1 or 2%.
Because if you taste it, it is by itself, it is dark. But when you mix it, you don't get like a dark flavor, like if you were using like a caramel or molasses or something like that.
It's like weird. It's like half of it is like a base note and then the other half is a top note. So it's like you get it very upfront, but it carries through the rest of the recipe. So I think that's why like you don't need to use much of it because it's not wispy at all. It doesn't just come and go. It's throughout the whole recipe. As far as I've used anything, that's the only good one to bring a brown sugar note.
So if you're making a dark kind of cookie, then is it a given that you probably need to use Flavorah caramel?
So Flavorah caramel is the only thing that, you know, tricks you into thinking, like, oh, that's a cookie. Because cookies, you need to use brown sugar in cookies. You can't just use white sugar.
Right. Yeah.
It doesn't work. There's probably only a few exceptions where you shouldn't, where maybe it's a sugar cookie or where you want that more white sugar note. Because I really don't know any other cookie concentrates that have the brown sugar note. They might be a little dark. They might be a little crispy or a little bit like buttery, but they don't have that actual brown sugar note. They're all very blonde.
So would you say that adding caramel to any cookie is basically giving it like depth, whereas if the regular cookie flavor doesn't really have much depth to it?
Imagine like a cake without the frosting on it. You know what I mean? Like it just seems to complete the whole thing.
Yeah, it's lacking something.
Yeah, it just seems like it's missing something in the middle. Which Flavorah caramel is great because you don't need much of it. You only need 0.25% usually to sell it as a cookie. But it's day and night. Try it without Flavorah caramel and then try it with it. and it will literally fix the recipe.
But I've tried Flavorah caramel in other profiles, like for example, custards, and I don't get the brown sugar note. It depends on the application, I feel, because in some custards it feels more warm. Sometimes you use caramel with custards to make it more to have an extra dimension, to have more like a top note.
It almost is more of like just a darker sweetener, so it might read as like a spicier vanilla kind of note in there. The caramel properties of it, they're there, but they're not. It's not caramel. It's like it's almost toasty. It's not like just drizzling like brown sugar on top of something. It seems like it's really in there as an additive. It's changing stuff. It's moving stuff around and bending things. So if you wanted to use something that was brown sugar, then you have to accommodate the rest of the recipe around that too.
That's what you meant when you were saying about the blending effect of the flavoring.
It's not as crazy as like vanilla swirl, but like it has a lot of the same characteristics of what it can do. But there's no times where you're going to be like, oh, I'm either going to use Flavorah caramel or vanilla swirl to blend this recipe. You know what I mean? You're never going to do that.
No.
They're not. If it is a darker recipe, say you're trying to make an oatmeal or apple pie, anything like that, like, oh, you better be using Flavorah caramel, because it's really the only thing that's not built into like something like Flavorah apple filling that you can actually create that kind of a flavor. You can create that like syrupy, gooey kind of thing with like, you know, brown Flavorah caramel and golden syrup. And you can actually get like a sticky, not quite like caramel, but almost like a brown sugar syrup.
And the comparison with a simple syrup made out of brown sugar is not only about the flavor, it's also about the mouthfeel and the texture, because it is kind of heavy and thick.
It was like granulated molasses, right?
It's like when you want to make like a rice pudding and you need that effect of the milk being cooked, you can add a little bit of it to have that effect.
It does interesting things with like apple, pear, and booze. It's really cool what you can do with Flavorah caramel and like rum and bourbon and stuff like that, because it seems to just go with those things.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be more like using it as like a simple syrup or something like that.
Right.
You actually pull out some more of the dessert characteristics of the boozy notes and stuff.
What about tobaccos?
I love hate relationship with like RY4 double. I love that it's like a nice brown sugar note. I really like that. And it's nothing like their TFA brown sugar. It's really close. Like the Flavorah caramel brown sugar and RY4 double minus the dirtiness. Like it's a very close brown sugar. Mm-hmm. But I've used Flavorah caramel sometimes instead of using a sweetener, because it's hard to find the right sweetener for a tobacco. I was just going back to the sweetener episode. That's probably the best sweetener to use with a tobacco, Flavorah caramel. If it's a blonder recipe, then yeah, it's not really going to work too well. Or if it's like overly spicy or something. But like Flavorah caramel, Flavorah Turkish, and sweet and smoky, like that's a simple recipe and you're gonna enjoy it.
What about percentages? Because I have never used Flavorah caramel over 1%, and the times I tried that flavoring solo, it was like getting spicy when you use it too high.
Even if you're trying to go as like a brown sugar forward recipe, like 1% is kind of pushing it. You're gonna taste it at 0.5%. Like I would say anywhere realistic, like, real world usage, it's probably between 0.25% and 0.5%.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like you could do better with like layering stuff, and like, 0.25% with an actual caramel is still going to kind of taste like brown sugar.
So it's still being used kind of as an additive, even in that scenario where you really want that brown sugar to come through.
It's more used as an accent flavor. It's like, it's not just an additive, but it's more of something how you're slightly changing the flavor profile of another flavor.
So, Max, if Flavorah comes out with a brown sugar, Is it going to taste like caramel?
I mean, at this point, I would fucking hope so.